Welcome to r/RedditRevenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. Thank you friends for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. The first story. I wanted my colleague to be nervous, and this prevented her from working. Her performance decreased. The second story. Two people got fired for fixing a Teacher of the Year award, and because a classmate and myself did a little poll. The third story. I swam in the pool, and my neighbors didn't like it, so they roast up in their apartment. On to the first story. Just do your job. A bit of venting about a terrible colleague to start, followed by some very petty revenge on her. I used to work as a dispatcher for a charter airline, and one of my coworkers was an unbearable, miserable cow. Working in the dispatch office was an entry-level position, which would lead to a job as a pilot within a year, and the upgrades were done solely based on date of hire. Everyone got in line and waited until their number came up. When the cow was hired, though, she made it very obvious that she thought the dispatching job was beneath her. And she smugly told everyone that she expected to be flying in 6 or 7 months. She was such a smarmy bee that she basically told everyone else that she was better than us, and that management would promote her over us all, even while she was still being trained. Now, this cow's ability and cognitive development were far below par, and she struggled with a job that consists mostly of copying down numbers. So I kept quiet for a while in the expectation that she would eventually get a face full of reality. Not long after she was hired, we began having trouble with the dispatch computer. It started with the flight tracking software not showing any active flights, which is kind of a major issue, and then progressed to Outlook not receiving any emails. The IT manager, who was a full-time pilot with a computer science degree, and had convinced management to pay him more to not fix anything, took a cursory look at it, couldn't find anything wrong, and dismissed the matter. I did my best to troubleshoot the problem, but I wasn't really allowed to do anything to any company-owned system without the IT manager's permission, so I gave up and stopped caring. I was going to start flying soon anyway, so it wouldn't be my concern for much longer. About a week after the trouble began, I happened to pan the mouse across the clock, which caused the date to pop up, except that it was 2 months ahead of the actual date. I reset it, and suddenly all the flights which were in the air popped up on the tracker, and emails poured into Outlook. Both had settings which showed only the most recent data. I think the tracker only showed flights in the last 24 hours, and Outlook only showed emails from the last week. And since the flight info and emails had dates that were 2 months old, compared to the computer's calendar, it didn't show them. When I mentioned this to the dumb cow, she revealed that she had been using the adjust date and time function to plan her personal schedule a couple of months in advance, and instead of hitting cancel, she hit OK. I explained what the problem had been with a small chuckle, because it turned out to be so simple, but she just glared at me, said something to the effect of, "Then why didn't you fix it sooner?" and went back to inspecting her nails. Suddenly I realized that she was more than merely ignorant of her faults. She was downright malevolent and incapable of accepting responsibility for her own actions, and after that I stopped giving her any leeway. As I already said, we weren't allowed to do anything to the computer without the IT manager's permission. I had once gotten in trouble because he thought I downloaded a program, and the issue quietly went away when he checked the hard drive and discovered that I hadn't actually done anything wrong. No apology was given. The dumb cow was fully aware of this, but still thought it was fine to install programs and go on questionable sites. We ended up with some useless toolbars, a couple of viruses, and although I'm not certain it was her, someone couldn't figure out how to download attachments from emails, and installed Internet Download Manager, which won't let you open an attachment without purchasing a serial number to upgrade from the free trial period. It was easy to uninstall, which I had to do since the IT manager was too busy designing the worst Flash website I've ever used, but constantly putting up with this bee's incompetence and SH attitude was starting to infuriate me. The final straw came when I arrived as her replacement for a night shift. One of the planes had returned an hour before, and the coolers of drinks from the charter were sitting in the corner waiting to be put away. There had been enough time for the flight crew to unload, put the plane in the hangar, and complete their paperwork, but not enough to return a few cans of pop to the cupboard and dump the ice. There was only one plane flying, and I could see from the tracker that nothing else had moved in the last hour, but the cow couldn't find the time in her texting to do her job. I told her to put the drinks away before she left, but instead she started packing up her SH. As she headed for the door, I stopped her. "Are you going to put that stuff away?" "No, that's night shift's job." She smirked her sea-faced smirk. "No, it effing well isn't. The plane came back an hour ago and you've been sitting here with your thumb up your A. Put it away." "I don't think so. See you in the morning." And her BA disappeared out the door. I sat there fuming for the next 12 hours, trying to come up with some way to pay her back. I would have liked to leave the drinks out for her in the morning, and perhaps stacked up a couple of additional cases, but she would probably have then gone to the manager and told him I hadn't bothered cleaning up from my shift. If I had her phone number, I could have posted it on Craigslist with a request for some disgusting calls, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't really do anything, since I was at work and didn't want to do anything which could risk my future flying job. There was nothing I could sabotage, and I didn't have any of her personal effects to rub in my A-crack. In one last desperate attempt to do something to get my vengeance, I took the dispatch cell phone, set every alarm it had for the busiest time of the day, each a few minutes apart with the loudest and most annoying ringtone available, and put it in a closet on a shelf so high I could barely reach it. She was quite a bit shorter than me, and I put the phone behind a stack of books which made it even less accessible. Finally, since I had cleaned up from her charter, I figured there was no need for me to make coffee or get the coolers of drinks ready for the one in the morning, even though it was leaving just after my shift ended, and I was supposed to prep everything for it. It wasn't the best I could do, but given the constraints of the situation and my lack of knowledge of her home address, I couldn't come up with anything better. I wanted my colleague to be nervous, and this prevented her from working. Her performance decreased. The next morning when she came in, I greeted her in an overly friendly tone of voice, as I informed her that a charter was leaving shortly, and that I hadn't readied anything for it. She scowled and her mouth opened to complain, but before she could, I gave her a big grin and shouted, "See you tonight," as I pranced out the door. When I returned that evening, she was in a foul mood, barely looking at me, and tersely giving me the shift trade briefing without any small talk, and left in silence. The cell phone was back on the counter, all of the alarms having been canceled. It wasn't completely satisfying, but knowing that I'd annoyed the hell out of her for an hour or so, and probably made her spend 5 or 10 minutes trying to find the source of the first alarm, gave me a bit of pleasure. Better still is that a couple of weeks later she finally realized that she couldn't hack the job when it got busy and stressful, and that she wouldn't jump the queue to get flying, so she quit. I hope she never finds a flying job. We're all safer as she never gets her hands on the controls of an aircraft. The second story is, fix the vote, lose your jobs. Posting from a throwaway because this one made local news. This one is pretty complicated, so it's hard to know where to start. I had a music teacher in high school that got let go for seemingly no reason. Many of us suspected that he was removed because the administration thought he was bisexual. Not sure if he was though. He later married a woman if I remember correctly. Because he got let go without an explanation, and he was a much-loved teacher, a few of the students, including myself, confronted the administration about the termination both in private meetings and at a school board meeting. In all instances, we were not given an explanation for the termination. I was young and probably did not understand the legality at the time. But in hindsight, it makes sense that they said nothing. Fast forward a few months and at the end of the year, there's a Teacher of the Year award that the students vote on. A few of us got it into our heads that we would campaign for the music teacher for Teacher of the Year, to stick it to the administration, and show our appreciation for a beloved teacher. As no one ever campaigns for Teacher of the Year awards, it was probably going to be easy to tilt to one side. A few days later, the award was announced, and it went to a different teacher who was retiring. At first, I was disappointed, but the more I thought about it, the more it did not make sense. I did not know very many people that voted for the person that won the award. We had a small school, so it seemed unlikely that they won. A classmate and myself did an informal poll and discovered that, at least according to the poll, the music teacher should have won by a landslide. At this point, one other student and myself brought our findings to a handful of teachers we trusted. The teachers were irate, I mean completely livid. They all seemed to agree that this was not something that the administration should be teaching to students, that people can fix votes and cheat their way to a desired result. They asked us what we wanted out of the situation, and we asked them to get the administration to apologize for fixing the vote. We confronted the guidance counselor and principal, who allegedly counted the votes. They got very defensive, denied they rigged the vote, and stormed out. That evening, my father, who happened to be a small-town lawyer, got a call from the teachers. At the time, I was unaware. I learned about this later. The teachers had found the ballots in the dumpster in the bag shredded. They were worried that their jobs were in jeopardy if they took the ballots, so they passed the ballots to my father to keep in legal trust. They got a group of people together and assembled enough of the ballots to prove that the award was intentionally given to the wrong teacher. The school board was provided the evidence that the vote was rigged. At this point, the local news was involved. I can't remember when they caught wind of the situation, but I think the teachers got the news involved at some point to protect their own jobs. The guidance counselor and principal both got indefinite leave without pay, and Edit quit when they realized they would likely be terminated, all because they refused to apologize to the students for lying. The one downside to this all is that the guidance counselor's kid was a classmate of mine and a very nice kid. I still regret how the situation may have impacted him. As I grew up in a small town, to this day my father and their family are not on speaking terms because he had held those ballots in trust. The whole situation seems absurd, that people would fix a meaningless award to a teacher, and that people who would get fired for it was well beyond the world I knew prior to that time. The last story is, tell me to cover up in my own yard, be beholden to my thighs every summer. About 5 years ago, a greedy councilman put up 3 two-story apartments next door to our house. One of these has a direct view of our pool area, and a grouchy woman and her husband moved into it. Anyhoot, as we've done in the 15 summers before they got there, we all went for an afternoon swim. The woman was on her balcony and made a huge dramatic fuss about going back inside and closing her curtains. She then screeched at her husband when he tried to go outside. It's not like we were indecent or anything, just in our swimsuits. We laughed about it and continued having a nice afternoon at the pool, while she roasted inside. A few days went by, and I decided it was too hot to be inside and went for a dip. I was in the middle of uni, and this was the only time I'd leave the house between assignments and tests. Now, I do not have a body that stops traffic. I am a regular plump human whose Dorito-loving habits have begun to show around the lower body area. I take off my sarong and jump into the pool. After a few minutes, I sense someone watching me, look up and find a man on the balcony smoking and staring right at me. I make a bit of an aggressive "what" gesture, and he scurries back inside, only to return with the woman in tow. The conversation went something along the lines of, her, excuse me, could you not swim when my son is out here smoking? He just lost his job and this is the time he'd normally smoke, and you're out here naked and distracting him. Me, ooh, he's the age of my dad. He can smoke on your front balcony, and I've lived here for at the time 15 years, so you can't blame me for being here naked, which I'm not, I'm swimming. Her, I'm just asking you to be considerate, okay? At this point, the grown-A man-baby was looking smug. Me, if you don't like it, then move. And I continued swimming. They stood there for another 5 minutes before once again going inside and closing the sliding patio doors and curtains. Also, I was not naked or indecent. I wear full swimsuits because I'm a little insecure about my belly. See paragraph about the Doritos. I told my parents, and the next day my mom joined me in the pool to show them, and I quote, what real traumatizing thighs look like. But that got me thinking though. I could make their summers a living hell if closing all their curtains was how they'd go about seeing us in the pool. So now every summer, weather permitting, I go out and flash my thighs for a few hours in the afternoon and have them roast up in their apartment. It's been 5 years of this, and I'll continue doing this until the day I leave home. My mom and I are getting a good chuckle out of it, and I'm now on Amazon looking for the hairy dude swimsuit. Don't forget to subscribe and have a nice day.